My husband just died in a horrific accident, and at his funeral I discovered I wasn't the only one wearing his wedding ring. I am Tyler's wife, the stranger said, her gold band gleaming identical to mine. The church fell silent. I stood there in my black dress, clutching lilies so tightly their stems bent in my grip, as this woman, blonde, delicate, and visibly pregnant, stared at me with the same horror I felt mirrored on my own face. "Excuse me," I managed to say, my voice cracking. "I am Olivia Hayes. I've been married to Tyler for 7 years." The blonde woman's face drained of color. "I am Madeline Hayes. I've been married to Tyler for 5. My mother-in-law, or our mother-in-law, swayed on her feet before my sister caught her. Tyler's college friends exchanged glances, and I realized with sickening clarity that some of them were surprised. "This is ridiculous," I said, but my voice had no conviction because deep down I already knew it was true. The business trips that got longer each year, the separate bank account for his investments, the calls he'd take outside, pacing our driveway at midnight. Madeline stepped closer, her hand protectively over her belly. "He told me you were his ex's wife, that you had problems letting go." A laugh escaped me, sharp and brittle. "That's funny. He told me he never wanted children." The funeral director approached cautiously, clearly unprepared for this situation, but before he could speak, Tyler's assistant, Emma, pushed through the crowd, her face tight with stress. "I think both of you need to sit down," she said quietly. "To hear is more you don't know." My knees weakened as Emma handed me a folded paper. It was a life insurance policy for $5 million, dated 3 months ago. Both our names were listed as equal beneficiaries. "He knew you'd find out," Emma whispered, "and I don't think his car going off that bridge was an accident." I looked up to see Madeline receiving what appeared to be an identical document. Our eyes met across the room, two widows at the same funeral, united by shock and betrayal. The ache in my chest wasn't just grief anymore. It was something sharper, something that made me wonder if I'd ever known my husband at all. "Did you know?" Madeline asked me, her voice breaking. "Did you have any idea?" I shook my head, tears finally spilling. "Number, did you?" She pressed her lips together, one hand still on her stomach. "I thought I knew everything about him." I glanced at the gleaming casket, closed because they said his body was too damaged to view. For the first time since getting the call about Tyler's accident, I felt something other than devastation. I felt doubt. "I need to see him," I said, suddenly moving toward the casket. The funeral director stepped in front of me. "Mrs. Hayes, I strongly advise against Confronting." "Open it," Madeline said, coming to stand beside me. "We both need to see." As the director reluctantly moved toward the casket, Emma grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in painfully. "They told me there was hardly anything left to identify," she whispered urgently, "but I saw the police report. Something doesn't add up about where they found him." The casket lid raised slowly, revealing what was inside. The collective gasp from the mourners confirmed what I somehow already knew in my bones. What we were burying today wasn't the man either of us had married. It was the lies he'd built between us, the key stuck in the lock the way it always did when it rained. I jiggled it twice, shoulder against the familiar wood of our front door, my front door now, and stepped into the silence of what used to be our home. 7 years of marriage, and suddenly half the house felt like undiscovered territory. I walked through rooms I'd cleaned hundreds of times, seeing them with new eyes. The built-in bookshelf where Tyler insisted on keeping financial documents because they're safer at home than at the office. The locked drawer in his nightstand that he'd told me contained sentimental things from his childhood, too private to share even with me. I broke it open with a hammer, wood splintering under my rage. Inside, I found 3 burner phones, a passport with Tyler's photo but a different name, and bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of. At the bottom, a small velvet box contained another wedding band, this one sized for a man, identical to the one I'd slipped onto Tyler's finger at our wedding, identical to the one currently sitting in a plastic bag at the funeral home. My phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "We need to talk, this is Madeline." I ignored it, moving methodically through the house. In his home office, I pried up the false bottom of the filing cabinet, another of Tyler's private spaces I'd respectively avoided for years, property deeds for places I'd never visited, business partnerships I'd never heard him mention, and photographs of Tyler with Madeline in places he told me he was traveling alone, Paris 3 years ago. He'd brought me back a snow globe of the Eiffel Tower in the photo. Madeline was wearing the scarf I thought he'd bought for me. Another text arrived. "I found something at our house. Something bad. Please call me our house." The words stung more than I expected. I ignored this message too, continuing my search with methodical fury. The doorbell rang just as I discovered the lockbox hidden inside the air vent in our bedroom closet. I froze, listening to the insistent chiming. Through the window, I could see Emma's car in the driveway. I carried the lockbox downstairs and opened the door. "You shouldn't be alone right now," Emma said, stepping in without waiting for an invitation. Her eyes were rimmed red, her normally perfect makeup smudged. "I've been trying to figure out how to tell you this for months." "Tell me what?" I asked, clutching the lockbox. Emma's gaze dropped to it. "You found it. You knew about this, about Madeline." She sank onto the couch, burying her face in her hands. "I only figured it out last year. He made me promise not to tell either of you. Said it would destroy too many lives." "So you helped him?" My voice rose. "You helped him lie to us?" "No. Yes, I don't know." She looked up, miserable. "At first I thought he was just having an affair, but then I realized it was much bigger. 2 separate lives, 2 different social circles. He never mixed them, never slipped up. It was like he was 2 different people." I set the lockbox on the coffee table between us. "What's in here?" "The insurance policy you saw at the funeral, and probably evidence of everything else." She twisted her hands together. "Tyler was scared of something these past few months. He kept saying he needed an exit strategy, that people were after him. I thought he was being paranoid, but then a hawk." "Then what?" "His car went off Westlake Bridge, but they found his body 3 miles downstream with injuries that didn't match a drowning." My phone buzzed again. Madeline had sent a photo of an identical lockbox, opened to reveal documents and a USB drive. "Tell me everything you know," I said to Emma, finally texting Madeline back. "Don't touch anything else. I am coming over." Emma's eyes widened. "You are going to her house. Our husband is dead, Emma. Or is he?" I grabbed my car keys, because right now that's the only thing I am less sure about than whether I ever really knew him at all. Madeline lived in a renovated Victorian on the other side of town, and a neighborhood Tyler had once pointed out during a drive, saying, "Imagine living somewhere so pretentious." The irony wasn't lost on me as I parked in front of the house where my husband had played his other role. She answered the door in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her pregnant belly more pronounced in casual clothes. Up close, without the shock of the funeral, I could see she was younger than me, maybe early 30s to my 38. "You came," she said, relief evident in her voice. "I wasn't sure you would." I stepped inside immediately, struck by the familiarity of the decor. The same panel style Tyler had insisted on in our home, the same specific shade of gray on the walls, the same type of leather sectional. It was like walking into a mirror universe of my own life. You found a lockbox too, I said, following her to the kitchen where hers sat open on the island. And to this. She pointed to a laptop open to a bank statement, showing regular transfers $10,000 every month to an offshore account. He told me it was for our baby's future, a trust fund. I set my own lockbox beside hers. I haven't opened mine yet. I can't do it alone, she admitted, her hands trembling slightly. Whatever's in there, I need someone else to see it too, to confirm I am not losing my mind. I studied her face, searching for signs of deception or manipulation. All I saw was the same raw confusion I felt. How did you meet him? I asked. At a charity gala in Chicago 5 years ago. He said he was recently divorced and scared to trust again. She gave a hollow laugh. You, college friends. We ran into each other at our 10-year reunion. I opened my lockbox with the key I'd found hidden in Tyler's office. He told me he'd never been in love before. Inside my box was another insurance policy identical to the one Emma had shown us at the funeral, plus a passport in my name with stamps from countries I'd never visited. At the bottom lay a USB drive labeled Contingency and a handwritten letter addressed to both of us. Madeline pulled out a matching letter from her box. I was waiting for you to read mine. We sat at her kitchen table, each with our husband's final words at our hands. I opened mine first. Olivia and Madeline, if you are reading this, either I am dead or you've discovered the truth. Neither scenario was part of my plan. I know you both hate me right now, and you have every right to. But you are in danger and you need each other to survive what's coming. The money in the Cayman account is yours. The evidence on the drives will explain everything. Trust no one except each other. Not the police, not my family, not even Emma. I loved you both in different ways. That wasn't a lie. Tyler, I looked up to see Madeline's face had gone pale as she finished her identical letter. He's setting us up, she whispered. This is crazy. Why would we be in danger? I plugged the USB drive into my laptop. It contained dozens of folders with dates going back 5 years. The most recent was labeled with a date 3 days before Tyler's accident. Inside was a video of Tyler recording himself in what looked like a hotel room. If anything happens to me, he said to the camera, his face haggard with fear. It wasn't an accident. They found out about the money and they're going to come after it, after me, after my families. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. Olivia, Madeline, fine. I am sorry, I never meant for this to happen. The insurance money is real, take it and disappear tentatively. Don't trust each other for too long. The video ended abruptly, leaving us in shocked silence. I am pregnant, Madeline said finally, her hand protectively covering her belly. I can't just disappear. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a strange surge of protectiveness that made no logical sense. This woman should be my enemy, my rival instead. She felt like the only person who could possibly understand what I was going through. We need to figure out what he was involved in, I said, and whether he's actually dead. Her head snapped up. I gathered the papers, organizing them methodically. But I do know one thing. If Tyler thought we were safer apart, then maybe we're better off together. She nodded slowly, and I saw the same realization dawn in her eyes that had just crystallized in mine. The man we'd married had never truly existed at all. The medical examiner's office was a sterile, fluorescent-lit building that smelled of industrial cleaner and something else, something clinical and cold that caught in the back of my throat. I adjusted my fake ID badge courtesy of Madeline's surprising past as a college theater prop master and followed the young intern deeper into the building. Dr. Wilson doesn't usually allow civilians to view reports, he was saying nervously. But since you are with the insurance company, Octac centered procedure for claims this size, I assured him, channeling the confidence I'd seen Tyler use countless times to get what he wanted. We just need to verify cause of death before processing payment. The intern, his badge, Red Mitchell, nodded eagerly. It's just weird, you know. The whole case. Between us, some of the findings don't make sense. My pulse quickened. How so? He pulled up the file on his computer. The vehicle was recovered from the river below Westlake Bridge. However, side door open, airbags deployed, but the body wasn't found in or near the car. The current could have carried him downstream, I suggested, testing him. 3 miles upstream, Mitchell corrected, pointing to the report. Against the current. And look at these injuries. The autopsy photos made my stomach lurch. I forced myself to look clinically at the battered body of the man I'd shared a bed with for 7 years. Blunt force trauma to the back of the skull, defensive wounds on the arms, water in the lungs, confirms drowning as cause of death. But the ME noted these injuries occurred pre-mortem. Mitchell lowered his voice. Between us, it looks more like a homicide staged to look like an accident. I took pictures of the report with my phone, my hands trembling slightly. Has anyone else been asking about this case? Just the other insurance investigator yesterday? He frowned. Wait, don't you guys work together? I forced a smile. Big company. We departments. I gathered my things quickly. Thank you for your help. Outside, I called Madeline immediately. Someone else is looking into the autopsy, I told her, hurrying to my car. Someone also claiming to be from insurance. That's not all, she said, her voice tight with tension. Here is someone at my house right now. A man claiming to be Tyler's brother. Tyler doesn't have a brother, I said automatically, then caught myself. At least he told me he was an only child. He told me he had a brother who died in college. Madeline's voice dropped to a whisper. Olivia, I am scared. He knows details about Tyler. He says he needs to warn us. I am coming over. Don't let him leave. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Marcus Hayes, a man with Tyler's jawline and eyes, but harder, somehow more weathered. You're not in the will, I said bluntly. So what do you want? Marcus gave a humorless laugh. I don't want his money. I came to warn you both. He leaned forward, his expression grim. My brother was involved with some very dangerous people who launder money through legitimate businesses, who don't take kindly to being stolen from. Tyler was stealing from criminals? Madeline asked, skepticism evident in her tone. Tyler was always working an angle, Marcus replied. We grew up poor, with a father who taught us that taking what you want is sometimes the only way to get ahead. He glanced between us. The 2 wives, the double life, that was just Tyler being Tyler. But the last few years, he got in deep with some investors in Miami. Convinced himself he was smarter than them. Why should we believe you? I demanded. Marcus pulled out his phone and showed us a news article from 3 years ago about a businessman found dead in his car, apparent suicide, Tyler's former partner, he said quietly, a week after he threatened to expose the operation. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Dreek, A.S. King Kaitless. I showed it to Madeline and Marcus. It's starting, Marcus said grimly. They'll come after the money first, then anyone who knows too much. He stood up. I've said what I came to say. You two need to disappear temporarily. After he left, Madeline and I sat in silence processing. He's lying, she said finally. He has to be. I wasn't so sure. Tyler kept too many secrets for all of them them to be harmless. So what do we do? Before I could answer, both our phones chimed simultaneously. We each received the same message, this time with a photo attached. A picture of Tyler and me on our front porch taken yesterday. But Tyler was supposed to be dead. The text read, "Dre eat lecking or Jane him." I stared at the image, my world tilting again. The man in the photo was unquestionably Tyler, my husband, her husband, very much alive. "Oh my God," Madeline whispered, one hand clutching her belly protectively. "He faked his death." I zoomed in on the image, studying it carefully. "This could be old doctored," I said, but without conviction. Madeline's eyes met mine, wide with fear and a dawning realization. "If he's alive," she said slowly, "then whose body did we bury?" "It's definitely Tyler," Emma confirmed, studying the photo on my phone. We were sitting in my kitchen, blinds drawn, doors locked. "Look at the scar on his neck from that sailing accident last summer. And he's wearing the watch Madeline gave him for their anniversary." Madeline flinched at this reminder of their parallel lives, but kept her composure. Over the past week, as we dug deeper into Tyler's deception, we developed an unexpected rapport, reluctant allies united by betrayal. "When was the last time you actually saw him?" I asked Emma. Her eyes darted away briefly. "The morning of the accident, he came to the office to get some documents," seemed agitated. "You are lying," Madeline said calmly. She turned to me. "She's been lying from the beginning." Emma's face flushed. "I don't know what you are talking about." I slid my laptop across the table, showing security footage from a private airstrip, dated the day of Tyler's accident. The grainy video clearly showed Emma escorting a very alive Tyler to a waiting plane. "We found this on the USB drive," I said quietly, along with transfer records showing $2 million moved from Tyler's hidden accounts to one in your name the same day. Emma's composure cracked. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. "He said they would kill him if he didn't disappear," she sobbed. "That it was his only chance, that he'd send for both of you once it was safe." "And you believed him?" Madeline asked incredulously. "He was terrified. Said these investors had found out he was embezzling from them, that they had connections in law enforcement, that no one was safe." Emma wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her cheeks. "I've known Tyler since college. He's never been scared of anything. When I saw him like that attack, I thought about the autopsy report, the body found miles upstream with defensive wounds. Someone died, Emma. If not Tyler, then who?" Her eyes widened with genuine shock. "I don't know, I swear. He never said anything about hurting anyone." "The body was identified through dental records," Madeline said. "Those can be faked if you have the right connections or money." Emma stood suddenly. "I need to use the bathroom." "No." I blocked her path. "You don't leave this room until we get the full truth. He's going to call me tonight," she blurted out. "He calls every third night to check in, make sure everything's going according to plan." "What plan?" Madeline and I asked simultaneously. Emma sank back into her chair. "The insurance payout. He needs that money to establish new identities, to pay off the people hunting him." "And what happens to us?" I pressed. Her hesitation told me everything. "He's setting us up," Madeline realized, her face paling. "The identical letters, the warnings about being in danger. He's making it look like we helped him fake his death for the insurance money." "No," Emma protested, but her eyes betrayed her. I grabbed her purse, dumping the contents onto the table. Among her things was a burner phone, the same model as the ones I'd found in Tyler's drawer. "Is this how he contacts you?" I demanded. Emma nodded miserably. I checked the call log and found a single recurring number with a Costa Rican country code. "Tonight at midnight we'll be ready for his call," I said, a cold determination settling over me. "And Emma's going to help us." "Why would I do that?" she whispered. I showed her the final file we discovered on the USB drive. Evidence that Emma had been helping Tyler launder money for years, long before his disappearance. "Because if you don't," Madeline said, her voice steel beneath silk, "the FBI gets this tomorrow morning." Emma stared at the evidence of her complicity, then at the two women she'd helped betray. For the first time, fear replaced guilt in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. Later that night, as Madeline and I prepared for Tyler's call, she suddenly grabbed my arm. "Do you think there is any chance he actually loved either of us?" she asked, vulnerability breaking through her careful composure. "Even a little?" I thought about the years of calculated lies, the careful separation of his two lives, the contingency plans that protected only himself. "No," I said gently. "I don't think he knows how." At midnight the burner phone rang. I nodded to Emma, who answered with shaking hands. "Hey," she said, forcing normalcy into her voice. "Yes, everything's on schedule." I could faintly hear Tyler's voice through the speaker, confident and relaxed. Not the voice of a man in fear for his life. "They're both doing exactly what we expected," Emma continued, following our script. "Perfect." Tyler's voice came through clearer as Emma subtly increased the volume. "And they don't suspect anything. Olivia can be annoyingly perceptive sometimes." The casual dismissal in his tone made my chest tighten. "No, they both believe you are dead. Madeline's too focused on the baby to think clearly, and Olivia's just going through the motions." Emma glanced at me apologetically. Tyler laughed, actually laughed. "Good, once the money clears you know what to do. The evidence is already in place. By the time they realize what's happening, we'll be untraceable." "What about your promise to help them once it was safe?" Emma asked, going off script. A pause. "Emma, don't tell me you are getting sentimental. They were just cover-mogazient facades for different business circles. Madeline gave me access to her family's banking connections, and Olivia's legal firm handled clients I needed. The baby was by unfortunate timing." I watched Madeline's face crumple, one hand moving protectively to her belly. "So the danger from the investors Atarik," Emma prompted, "existed, but it's contained for now. The body we found was convenient homeless guy, right general build. A guessing what cash can do with the right medical examiner." He chuckled. "Look, once this is done, it's just you and me like we planned, 2 weeks tops." Emma's eyes widened in genuine surprise. I realized then that Tyler had been playing her too, promising her something he'd never intended to deliver. 2 weeks, she repeated woodenly. "I'll be ready." After the call ended, the three of us sat in stunned silence. "I didn't know," Emma whispered eventually. "About the body, about framing you both, I swear." "It doesn't matter what you knew," I said, my voice steady, despite the rage and grief churning inside me. Madeline met my eyes across the table, and in that moment something shifted between us, a shared purpose crystallizing from our parallel pain. "We find him," she said simply, "before he destroys what's left of our lives." I nodded, a plan already forming. "And we make him pay for what he's done." My house was ransacked on a Tuesday. I came home from meeting with a private investigator to find the front door splintered, furniture overturned, and Tyler's home office torn apart. The lockbox and USB drives were gone, along with my laptop and the files we'd collected. The police officer who responded looked bored as he took my statement. "Probably just random burglars," he said, not bothering to dust for prints. "They hit 3 houses in this neighborhood last month. I didn't argue after what we'd learned about Tyler's connections. I didn't trust anyone in uniform that night. Madeline called me in a panic. Someone tried to run me off the road, she gasped, her voice shaking. A black SUV with tinted windows. They followed me from my doctor's appointment, then swerved into my lane on Riverside Drive. If I hadn't jerked the wheel at the last second, she didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew what it meant. Pack a bag, I told her. Don't tell anyone where you are going. Meet me at the storage facility on Highway 16 in an hour. By midnight, we were checked into a motel 50 miles outside the city under fake names, paid for with cash. We need a plan, Madeline said, absently rubbing her 7 months pregnant belly as she paced the small room. We can't keep running forever. I spread out the few documents we'd managed to salvage on the bed, copies I'd made of key files and hidden at my office. Tyler's calling Emma again tomorrow night, I said. We need to trace that call, find out where he's hiding. And then what? We're not exactly trained assassins, Madeline said with a weak smile. No, but we have something better. I showed her the final piece of evidence I'd been holding back. Bank records showing that Tyler hadn't just been embezzling from dangerous investors. He'd been setting up elaborate paper trails implicating business rivals in his schemes. He's been playing everyone against each other, I explained, creating fall guys for when his house of cards eventually collapsed. So we turned him in, Madeline suggested. Anonymous tip to the FBI. I shook my head with his connections. He'd disappear again before they could build a case. Then what? We confront him, record his confession, get him to admit what he did, who he's working with, and who he framed. Madeline stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You want us to walk right up to him after he tried to have me run off the road while I am 7 months pregnant? Not exactly. I pulled out my phone and showed her a text from Emma. I know where he is. I can help. He lied to me too. You trust her now? Madeline asked skeptically. Not even slightly, but she's our best lead and she's scared. Tyler promised her a new life together, but we both heard him on that call. She was just another pawn. The next day, Emma met us at a diner off the highway, her normally perfect appearance disheveled, eyes darting nervously. He has a lake house, she said without preamble, in Michigan, registered under a shell company. He's been hiding there while waiting for the insurance money to clear. How do you know this? I asked. She pushed a key across the table. It's remote, 20 acres private road security system, but I have the codes. Madeline's eyes narrowed. Why are you helping us now? Why are you helping us now? Because I found this in my apartment. Emma showed us a life insurance policy identical to ours. And this, a folder containing fake emails and bank transfers designed to make it look like she'd been helping Tyler steal from his investors for years. He's planning to tie up loose ends, I realized. All of us. Emma nodded miserably. Just another patsy to take the fall when he disappears for good. We spent the next 3 days preparing. I contacted Tyler's estranged brother Marcus, confirming parts of Emma's story and gathering additional intelligence. Madeline reached out to a former client of hers who worked in digital security, obtaining recording equipment that couldn't be easily detected. Madeline asked the night before we planned to confront Tyler. We were sitting in my car outside the motel, going over the final details. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt that strange protectiveness again. In another life we might have been friends. In this one, we were something else entirely. The only two people who truly understood what the other had lost. If anything happens to me, I said carefully, here is a safety deposit box at First National with everything we've discovered. The key is taped inside my copy of Jane Eyre on the bookshelf in my office. She gave me a small smile. Appropriate choice. What do you mean? A woman discovering her husband had terrible secrets, that his first wife wasn't who she thought. Madeline rested her hand on her belly. I've started thinking about names. If it's a girl, what do you think of Olivia? The unexpected gesture caught me off. When Olivia arrived home from her confrontation with Emma, her front door stood slightly ajar. Cold dread washed over her as she cautiously pushed it open, revealing utter chaos inside. Her living room had been ransacked, furniture overturned, cushions slashed, books swept from shelves. The destruction continued through every room, methodical and thorough. They're looking for something, she whispered to herself, carefully stepping through broken glass. Her laptop was gone along with the USB drive containing the evidence Emma had mentioned. In her bedroom, the mattress had been sliced open, picture frames shattered. The only untouched space was Tyler's home office, already emptied during her earlier searches. Her phone rang, Madeline's name flashing on the screen. Someone broke into my house, Madeline said without preamble, her voice shaking. Everything's destroyed, mine too, Olivia replied, surveying the damage. Are you safe for now? But that's not all. Madeline's breath caught. Someone tried to run me off the road on my way home from the doctor. A black SUV came out of nowhere, forced me onto the shoulder. If there had been a guardrail instead of a ditch tech, she trailed off. Olivia's mind raced. He knows we're onto him. What do we do? Go to the police. Hope and doubt mingled in Madeline's voice. With what? A story about a man who faked his death and is now hunting his wives. Without Emma's testimony or the evidence from the USB, we'd sound delusional. Olivia moved to her window, scanning the street for unfamiliar vehicles. We need somewhere safe to regroup. There was a pause before Madeline spoke again. I know a place. My family has a cabin about 3 hours north. No one knows about it except my sister, and she's in Europe. Don't use GPS to get there. They could be tracking our phones. I'll meet you in 4 hours, Olivia. Madeline hesitated. Why are you helping me? If it weren't for me and the baby, you wouldn't be in this situation. Why was she helping this woman, the unwitting accomplice in her husband's betrayal? The answer came with surprising clarity. We're the only two people who understand what we're up against, and neither of us asked for this.